This is Ayanni.
And this is not Corinne.
And you're listening to Sex, Love, Literature, a pop culture podcast where we take a semi-scholarly look at why
and how
the sex stuff in media matters. Corinne wasn't feeling too well this week, so I called in the cavalry to help me this episode.
I'm the cavalry.
This time, I'm joined by my spouse and friend of the show, Andrew Cooper.
That's me.
To talk about the new action-dramedy series, Mr. and Mrs. Smith. We give our general impressions, think about the series' adaptation choices, and muse about the show's depiction of married life. Want to share your feelings about Mr. and Mrs. Smith? Or want to tell Corinne how much you missed her insights this episode?
Or how awesome it was that Andrew was on the show?
Hit us up on Instagram and Threads at SexLoveLit and Tumblr at SexLoveLitPodcast. And don't forget to subscribe to SLL on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or any of your other favorite podcast platforms. All right, on with the show. Well, hello there, SLL listeners. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Sex, Love, Literature. We are super excited to have you with us today. But you'll also notice, because you listened to our opening, that today's episode is a little different than usual. Our dear friend Corinne was ill when we planned to start recording, and that means I had to call in a special co-host to be with me today. So, without further ado...
She played the spouse card.
I did. I played the spouse card. So, Andrew, my husband, is going to be here with me today.
Happy to be here.
Oh, he's happy to be here, everyone. And
this is our date night.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, technically, so we're recording this on a Friday, which would normally be our, pizza date night kind of a situation.
We did have pizza.
Yeah,
I feel like this qualifies. I feel like this qualifies as a date, you know.
I'm going to hold that.
Well, I'm just saying, because I feel like I spend most of our dates rambling about storytelling and shows, and this is just you picking that up on a mic, so I feel like it counts.
I'm gonna take it. I'm gonna take it as a win because you're doing me a solid. So today we are going to be talking about the Amazon Prime show,
Yep,
Mr. and Mrs. Smith, which is exciting. We started watching it, a couple weeks ago?
Yeah, we had a bit of a pause in between, and then we finished up the last couple of episodes this week.
Yeah, and we had a lot of interesting feelings about it, and initially Corinne and I were going to be talking about something else, but this kind of seemed like it would be a good fit for...
Way more interesting.
I'm not going to say it's way more interesting.
You're saying it with your eyes.
I am not.
They can't hear it.
No, I'm not saying it with my eyes. Do not tell our listeners lies.
It's okay. It's okay.
And you also notice probably that we sound a little bit different because I'm using a different mic than normal because there are two people in one space rather than just me talking to Corinne on the internets in here. You made me lose my train of thought because you were telling me about
the looks you're giving
the looks in my eyes that you're making up. But anyhow, we thought Mr. and Mrs. Smith was a really interesting show and offered an interesting look at marriage. So we thought it would be a good thing for us to kind of chat about on the show.
As married people.
As married people.
With a couple of years up there of experience, you know?
Yeah, not with doing the married people who also do murders thing, but you know, we have some other insights perhaps that bring to the conversation. Actually, no, I guess you don't really need an introduction. You've been on the show before.
Yeah, but I was way back in the early years, in the midst of the plague was the last time I was
No. Last time you were on was when we did Hometown Cha-Cha-Cha. That wasn't the midst. Well, I mean, we haven't really left the plague.
Yeah, no, but the plague was the hot thing that everybody was talking about. It was actively destroying our social lives.
Hometown Cha-Cha-Cha was in 2021. That wasn't in 2020 because we recorded it from Texas.
I believe you.
Yeah, I remember because you were downstairs at the kitchen table. I mean,
you know what? I remember I had this argument with Corinne. You're right. It was 2021 in Texas.
I love being right. But do you want to, since it was so very long ago, do you want to give a quick introduction to who you are?
Yeah. So, my name's Andrew. I am Ayanni's husband of, how many years now? How many years have we been in the game now? The married game, not like the overall game.
6 years.
6 years? 6-ish years?
Yeah. Ish.
Ish.
You know what? Our anniversary is coming up, so
yeah,
I'll give you
say,
ish. Okay.
We're heading into year 7. But yeah, I like movies and just storytelling in general and video games and yeah.
It sounded like you said video games.
I did say video games.
What did you say? Okay. Well, I think Andrew's playing himself a little bit short there, but yes, he does like to read, he does like the video games in his most posts. And I'm excited to be talking to him about this stuff. However, before we dive into our conversation, it's time for one of our most popular segments.
Oh?
What's Sparking Joy? So, to quickly describe what's sparking joy, but I will not do it as succinctly as Corinne does, because she's got a script down, like memorized in her head about what's to say. But what's sparking joy is a moment in our show when we talk about a piece of media, movie, TV show, music, whatever, that is bringing us joy in the current moment. So, Andrew, as our guest, what is sparking joy for you?
So what's been sparking joy for me is Across the Spiderverse.
Of course,
as always, because I love that film. But more specifically, their socials have been doing this, creating the Spiderverse ongoing segment, I guess you could say, or ongoing hashtag, really, for award season, where they're just highlighting all the different areas of craft work that went into this film. So everything from VFX to lighting to the animator. So it's just giving all of their crew their flowers and kind of showing the inspiration behind scenes, the way that these people took these very, very personal moments or feelings and were able to kind of inject them into the film. The last one I watched actually was about the pickup game of basketball from like the opening, people playing in the wheelchairs. Yes, that's Ghost. Okay. That is our cat bellowing in the background.
Oh, okay.
Just fucking up the take.
No, it's totally cool. Ghost wants to be on the podcast. He can be on the podcast.
Ghost wants to be in everything. Everything. But yeah, no, so that social media campaign has been giving me a lot of joy getting to see how that movie was put together.
That's awesome. Passing it back to myself, I suppose. What's sparking joy for me, I guess this is a little bit past, but I just finished the anime Skippin' Loafer on Crunchyroll, which was the sweetest thing. It is a high school friendship, but budding first romance kind of story that just warms my heart. The main characters are just the cutest little cinnamon rolls, and I really enjoyed it. If you want something soft and comfortable to watch, Skippin' Loafer is a good one. I almost wish that I hadn't watched it, that I had held on to it for a little bit, because I'm getting ready to try to dive into the second season of Jujutsu Kaisen, and I've heard
those are two very different things. Very different vibes.
The goal was I was talking to our friend Ryan, and what he recommended, because I was trying to decide between Jujutsu Kaisen and Dungeon Meshi, and he recommended watching like the chunks of Jujutsu Kaisen that I could handle, and then watching something soft like Dungeon Meshi, or the one about the big cat who like makes food for the person that lives in his house. So yes, I did say cat ghost. So I almost wish that I had saved Skippin' Loafer to be like my warm, comforting blanket as I work my way through season 2 of Jujutsu Kaisen, that somehow I still have not been massively spoiled for.
Yeah, I started reading the manga for that, and I'm going to request that you let me know where the second season ends off, because the manga hit me with some emotionally devastating shish kebab, so I've just kind of been...
You concur.
Can I? I don't know. Is this a network show? I don't know, man. I don't know what's the deal with your sponsors.
Shit, we don't have sponsors.
You don't have sponsors? No. I was doing this for promo. You ain't got no sponsors?
What were you even saying?
I don't even was gonna just say to let me know where you leave off because I want to watch, but like I read the manga. It was emotionally devastating where I left off, and I need to know what the fate of a particular character is going to be before I'm gonna start like engaging with Jujutsu Kaisen at all again.
So you want me to be your vanguard?
Yeah, you're my vanguard. You're gonna let me know.
Got it.
Like you'll let me know what happens. I'll know when you get to the part because you cry over everything, so you're gonna be a blubbering mess.
I do.
So when that happens, we can check in, and I'll be like, no, that's not it, or yes, it is. And then when it gets there,
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Jujutsu Kaisen will be sparking a lot of something that won't be joy, but Skip and Loafer sparked a lot of joy for me. It was just sweet and warmed my heart. I guess we got really off talking about Jujutsu, but the sweet premise of the show is that there is a high school girl. She's starting high school in Tokyo. She's from the countryside, and her goal is to become a politician so she can come back and become the mayor of her little city and help it revitalize, because it's been facing a lot of just people are leaving, it's being eroded by the environment and all that kind of stuff. So she wants to help make her city the best city it can be. And to do that, she's in school in Tokyo with all the fashionable Tokyo kids. And she meets the male lead when she takes the wrong train. And they become fast friends, and it's really sweet and warm, and it's about making friends and having buddies, and I love shows about making friends and having buddies. So I think you should watch Skip and Loafer. It's on Crunchyroll, and it'll bring you some warmth. We also have a special recording from Corinne, even though she couldn't be here today, to tell us about what's sparking joy for her.
Hi SLL listeners, I'm very sorry not to be recording this week, but since I've been sick, I have watched, surprise, surprise, a lot of dramas. So I'm popping in to recommend 2 of them to you for my What's Sparking Joy. The first one, I'm sure K-drama listeners have heard about, but it's called Tell Me That You Love Me, and it just became available in the United States on Hulu. It has been caught in the Disney Plus streaming net, which I'm continually annoyed about. That's going to be my villain origin story. But for anyone who hasn't heard about it or hasn't seen it yet, it's this really lovely slice of life K-drama about an up-and-coming actress, and very much just starting out her career. She's in her early 30s. She was a flight attendant, but really wanted to be an actress, so she finally decided to just pursue it, and she ends up meeting this artist who is deaf. And it's a really, really lovely romantic melodrama, very light on the drama, or at least light on the melodrama, but it's a very emotionally quiet drama where again it's about a lot of things that are not said rather than about things that are said. But it's really, really lovely watching the 2 leads communicate. I really enjoyed the B couple, and it was a really sort of nice, very level slice of life drama for me to watch when I could not leave my couch. The second drama I'm going to recommend to you is the first Taiwanese drama that I have watched. It's called Let's Talk About Chu, C-H-U. It just started streaming on Netflix in early February, at least in the United States. And it is a sex comedy about a young woman who starts essentially a YouTube show. I think it's called something else because of, copyright reasons, with sex advice. And her whole thing is only sex, no love. And she starts a friends with benefits relationship with one of her friends, which, I'm sure you can see where this is going. That doesn't necessarily work out for her. But this show follows her romantic and sexual exploits. It follows her brother, who is gay, so there's kind of like a BL storyline going on. It follows her older sister, who is married and kind of trying to deal with the spark going out of her relationship, and then her parents' relationship as well. It was super funny. It starts out, the whole thing is very sexually explicit, but they do start out with, I think, being a little bit extra over the top with the explicit sex, and then it sort of settles into this really actually sort of very charming family story. I really enjoyed it. It was super fun. It's only 8 episodes, so not too much of a time commitment. Highly recommend checking it out. Hopefully, I will be back next time we record. But until then, that has been my What's Sparking Joy. All right, back to you, Andrew and Ayanni.
And so that was What's Sparking Joy. I'm kind of tickled at how much of a tangent we got on during mine. Yours was very succinct, Andrew, and then for mine, we kind of spiraled all the way over here.
To be fair, if mine is succinct, it was because of editing on your part.
I am very good at what I do. But without further ado, why don't we turn to discussing Mr. and Mrs. Smith? Because I know we have a lot that we kind of want to talk about.
Yeah.
To start, Andrew, why don't you give us a little bit of a description about the show?
All right. So this show is about two strangers who land jobs with a spy agency that offers them a life of espionage, wealth, and travel. But the catch is that they have to assume new identities and are placed in an arranged marriage.
Bum, bum, bum. So Mr. and Mrs. Smith is a retelling of a...
reimagining, I would say.
Reimagining?
You know, we deal with a lot of reboots, rebuilds. It was in 2006 was when the first Mr. and Mrs. was when the movie came out.
A lifetime ago.
Yeah, man, that was like when the Dark Knight trilogy was like.
Oh my god.
Yeah, this was pre Ironman.
Whoa.
Yeah. It's funny how we can like date like cinema's blockbuster history by like pre-Marvel and post-Marvel, but this was a
pre-MCU.
Oh, 100%.
Whoa, this is a different world.
Yeah, literally, because this was probably one of, if you think about it, I don't think it was one of the last star-powered like blockbuster action adventure films, but like it was definitely in like the twilight years of that, because it starred Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt kind of like at the height of their popularity before things would spiral out as they did in real life. But yeah, it was a huge hit.
Was it really? I guess it was.
It did really. It was I think it was, and this is like me going through the Rolodex of useless film information in my head, but I think it was like the 9th highest grossing film of that year.
Oh wow, really?
Yeah. And I think like again, I think one of the Batman like that was the years when Nolan was making his Batman trilogy, so there were some heavy hitters that year, and it had a good showing.
Wow, I didn't know that. I don't think I saw it in theaters. I think I saw it at home. Like I remember watching it on the couch, I think.
Yeah, I think that was one of those movies that I think I saw twice.
Oh.
Because I really enjoyed the dynamic, and Simon Kinberg wrote that script. He's an amazing screenwriter. But like, yeah.
Shout out to Simon Kinberg.
Yeah, shout out to Simon Kinberg.
And we are going to talk a little bit about adaptation, right? We didn't watch the movie to do this episode, so it's not like we're going to be like comparing and contrasting scenes, but I think that is something that you were interested in kind of coming back to.
Yeah.
But before that, really quickly, just want to talk about the important cast and characters here. It's not as long of a list as sometimes we usually go through, but I do want to highlight that John Smith, I guess our main John Smith, is played by Donald Glover, who you all, I'm sure, are familiar with. Also goes by Childish Gambino. He's a multi-talented actor, rapper, singer extraordinaire. And then we also have Jane Smith, who's played by Maya Erskine, who is another very talented actor. She was in Pen 15, among other things. She was one of the voice actors in Blue Eyed Samurai, I think, of the main character, right?
Yes.
In that. So she doing a lot of work right now, and absolutely loved her in this. They are the main married couple that we are focusing on. And then there's also this mysterious character dubbed Hi Hi, who is not, there's no actor, right? Played by an Apple MacBook, I guess, because we only ever get Hi Hi through text, through like text messages or an instant messaging platform. But Hi Hi is really important, and we will probably mention Hi Hi again. And then there are other characters. It's actually a small cast.
They have assembled like an army of like some of the best character actors, just like
in
the business.
And we'll kind of, if other characters of importance come up, we'll kind of bring them up and then we'll shout out the actors at that point. But really, I think a lot of our conversation is going to center around Jane and John, because they really are like the emotional core of the show, the driving force of the show. To start, Andrew, what are some of your kind of like general impressions of the show? We'll do kind of like a pre-spoilery kind of discussion, and then when we're getting ready to dive into the spoilers, we'll give you all a warning and a heads up.
So the long and short of it is, I love this show. I really loved what it did. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I think, again, we're not comparing and contrasting directly, but I think the original Mr. and Mrs. Smith was kind of like this Gen Xer sort of film, where it was mainly about the idea of these two people who had lost themselves in the conformity of suburbia, and they have the McMansion, and they are kind of going through the airs of social appearances, and they kind of lost themselves in the machine, and the whole film was about them rediscovering who they are, rediscovering that spark, and kind of, to the point where they literally end up blowing up the McMansion that has kind of like encased their identities.
From my 2024 perspective, the thought of someone blowing up their house just makes me really angry.
Yeah.
I'm like, how dare they?
But I think,
don't they know how much?
But I think that
housing market is out of control. But
kind of riding with that sentiment, this Mr. and Mrs. Smith feels like it's very much so built from a millennial perspective, where the desire isn't so much about like, oh, I just want to have this spark, and I want to break out of this box. It's more so about
the things we do for employment.
Yes, though. Yeah, I mean, like, that's the joke, but yeah, because these characters want safety and security and comfort, and they want that financially. That's part of why they take this job that's like a mix between like a weird dating sim and like, Mission Impossible. But it's also kind of what they're looking for in each other. And so instead of kind of having the tension be between, oh, these are these two spouses and neither of them know the other is a spy, and now they have to kill each other. Instead, it's kind of like, hey, here are these two strangers that both kind of want the same thing on paper in terms of safety and security, but are both really deeply fucked up and lonely. And we're gonna put them together, and we're going to watch these two people form a relationship. And I think kind of the reason I love the show is that it falls into my favorite category of storytelling, which is relationship dramas and cosplaying as like a genre film, where
okay, yeah, I could see, yeah, that makes sense,
because like you see the trailers for it, and you'll see a lot of the comedy, and you'll see some of the spy action adventure stuff.
Yeah.
But really at the heart of it, this is a relationship story. This is a story about these two characters and kind of the lifespan of their love affair and what happens.
Ooh, that was really succinct, Andrew. Because I think you're 100% right, thinking about like the characters and what they're looking for, and why thinking and watching their relationship, or thinking about and watching their relationship, is so engaging. I was also really interested in just kind of the construction of the show, if that makes sense. So thinking about how I think there's a lot of interesting shot work and shot composition that's happening. I was really interested in the use of color, in how they were using that to set the mood and set tone. There were a couple sequences where like their outfits were deliberately played against each other to show off how they're being incompatible in a moment, or to show how they're coming together, which I thought was really interesting. So there was like this attention to detail in what was being put on the screen and how everything was being composed that I really appreciated. It made for an engaging watching experience. Also, the wardrobe was fantastic.
Oh, wardrobe was fantastic.
Wardrobe, like, everybody had an outfit that I was like, yes, please.
They had ridiculous drip throughout that entire show. Like, there wasn't one
entire show.
I remember, what was that? There was literally an episode where they went camping, and they were like in the woods.
Yes.
And like Donald Glover was like in his underwear with like a t-shirt on.
It's
some boots. And I'm like, damn, he still look fashionable. This is ridiculous.
But no, yeah, you're like 300% right. I remember exactly what you're talking about. Though probably for different reasons than you do.
Yeah, I know. You're probably looking at his thighs.
What? No, not me. But yeah, so why don't we throw our little spoiler warning here? If you haven't watched Mr. and Mrs. Smith, which is on Amazon Prime, I highly recommend you go check it out. I will say I'm a little pissed at Amazon Prime for being like, oh, well, now there are commercials. You can pay more money if you don't want the commercials. Fuck them. We watched those commercials halfway. We didn't really watch them. We put them on.
I was like, we would do other things and then come back.
Go warm up some pizza and then put it back on. But anyhow, if you do not want to be spoiled about Mr. and Mrs. Smith, this is the point to pause the show and come back when you watched it. But if you don't care about spoilers, or you like having them before you go into a show, then we shall continue on. One of the things that you said, Andrew, is that the relationship dynamics was one of your favorite things about Mr. and Mrs. Smith. And we already kind of talked a little bit about adaptation, in that this is perhaps a more millennial version of Mr. and Mrs. Smith, in that, they were really excited about having a place to stay.
Oh yeah, they had this big ass house.
But why don't we dive into the relationship a bit? So like, what about it was really engaging for you? What drew you in thinking about how their relationship comes together, how it breaks apart?
A lot of things. One of the things I enjoyed is how these two characters are fundamentally opposites, right? And we're shown that the show starts kind of with them on the last leg of this interview process where they are talking to this, this digital kiosk, essentially.
Yeah, it does look like a lot like the McDonald's.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it looks
screens.
like something that you would order some fast food off of, only it's like giving a job interview, and it feels like we're not too far from that. So,
oh God, don't say that. Don't say that. I hate everything about what you just said.
But they're sitting there, and it's a useful way to kind of give us this exposition, and we learn things like she is way more financially savvy than he is. He's living paycheck to paycheck. She's got like 15 grand in the bank. He's in contact with his mother.
He being John and she being Jane.
Yeah. John is in contact with his mother. Jane is very much so estranged from her family.
Yeah, she's no contact with her father.
And so we kind of see on paper, it's like, why did they match these two up? Which is kind of a question that like was boiling in the back of my head the entire time. Particularly because the whole premise of the show is that they take two people, they put them in this fake marriage to give them, a credible cover, and then have them go out on missions. And essentially your spy spouse functionally becomes your real spouse because you were both dialed into this life. You're not supposed to have any contact with your family.
Yeah.
And
not really develop strong relationships with other people outside of that spy partner that you're with.
Yeah, so it immediately kind of creates this codependent sort of dynamic between these characters that they initially kind of resist. They do try to keep it professional.
These two try to resist.
John
and Jane.
Well, I'll say these two. John and Jane try to resist initially, but we see over the course of the story how those walls get broken down. And what I do appreciate is that they get broken down very quickly. The show doesn't take long to get them romantically entangled.
No, it's like what, episode 2?
2, yeah, which is great because a lot of the times, or I don't want to say a lot of the times, but a number of times I feel like something like this is held off on, and in reality, this is kind of why we're watching the show, is this relationship dynamic. So it makes sense to get to it sooner rather than later. And it just felt like the right amount of time was taken. They had both gone through basically a day from hell when it happened.
For a little bit of context, it was their first mission.
Second mission, when they broke down the barriers.
Yeah. What was the second mission?
The first mission was when they the second mission was when they had to use truth serum on that billionaire.
Oh my God.
And they failed.
And they failed so bad. So what the conceit was, because the first episode, it was kind of about establishing who they are, their initial dynamic, what the job will be like. All that kind of stuff is laying the groundwork there. And then in the second episode, they're kind of in it.
Yeah.
And they're like, we're not going to have sex. That's not what's going to happen.
Yep.
And as you were saying, they had to get this billionaire and inject him with true serum and get some information for their...
Well, I was telling you one vial.
Oh, yeah. And they have to inject him with true serum and to get some information for Hi-Hi. Hi-Hi is their mysterious computer boss.
/matchmaker.
Matchmaker, right? But the key was they're only supposed to inject him with one vial of truth serum, and there was to be no casualties. And they did a bad job. They injected him with 2 vials of truth serum.
Because they both had one, and they didn't realize that their partner had planned to inject, so they both inject him at the same time.
In the butt! In his butt cheeks. And so he goes extra loopy and then dies. So they failed on 2 accounts. So it was a really horrible for second mission, as you were saying, or the second mission we're shown. But their first fail.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah. Walls breaking down.
Yeah, walls breaking down. They go to Pound Town.
Boo. Rejected.
But no, so they break that barrier in their relationship, and then at that point they're kind of off to the races.
Yeah.
And what's interesting to me is the failure plot thread is something that gets introduced in this episode, and the idea is that they have 3 failures before something bad happens. We don't quite know what that is, right? But what is notable is that each time they fail, it's because of a relationship issue. It is because of miscommunication, or because of just conflict between them, or because of a jealousy and a lack of trust. And this kind of goes back to what I was saying about like this being a relationship drama first, and a spy drama second, because we never really get into there are so many questions in this show, and the characters never really preoccupy themselves with them. Like, who is Hi-Hi? What are the aims of this organization? I was
asking myself that the whole time.
It's funny. They kind of ask about it really quick. They're like, yeah, I wonder what it is. But then they're kind of just off
to the races.
Back off to the races, kind of doing their job and having dealing with their relationship.
Because it's hard out here, man. The economy bad. You got to work the job you could get. But no, you're absolutely right. There, these moments that they fail are because they're not communicating, or because something is going wrong in their relationship. But while you were talking, actually, something that jumped to mind for me was this idea of the fact that they're not really allowed to have relationships outside of the 2 of them, because no one can really know what it is that they're doing, right? And it made me think about the conversation that often happens that, when people get married, they'll like cut all their friends off, or they won't interact with other people, or it's like, oh, I don't want you hanging out with them. And marriage can become a very strangely insular thing for people, in which you're suddenly demanding one person to be everything for you. And I mean, usually it's not, we're international spies. So like, I mean, I don't know. Maybe everyone around us is international spies, and we just don't know.
We're just the only ones.
Yeah, we're
just the only normies around.
Yeah, right? But that kind of pressure that is then put on your partner to fulfill every single one of your needs and balance every single one of your shortcomings is a stifling kind of
situation. And I feel like the show did a great job of showcasing that. How they even say you have these 2 characters that are, every aspect of their lives has become intertwined. Their work, their personal life, just everything is kind of all the same deal, right? And this also gets complicated because they don't always follow the rules. John, despite one of the major caveats was that they are supposed to cut off all contact
with everyone in their past
everybody
lives.
from their past lives. John does not do this. John keeps in contact with his mother. So that creates a situation for Jane, because that is somebody that, has information about her, that knows that she that she exists and could potentially compromise them. And it's one of many sources of tension. And you get this sense that these 2 characters even though they come to deeply care for each other, can't escape each other either.
Bruh, so that was something that, like, I was thinking about. If, and I care about you a lot, but if every aspect of my existence was tied to you, it'd go fucking insane.
Oh, yeah.
It'd go fucking insane.
And, like, I think that was one of the things. Like I said, I love the honesty in the situation where I think one of my favorite lines in the entire show was I think it was the 7th episode.
He's got him down. Which one is the 7th one?
The 7th one is the infidelity one, where that one's juicy. Where essentially the premise of the episode is, at this point they have failed 2 missions. They have gone to couples counseling, which did not go.
Can we come back to that episode?
Yeah, we can.
That episode is so good in a variety of levels. But go ahead.
Did not go well, right? But they decide they decide to ask their boss to work separate missions, and one of these missions, the one that John is on, is to eliminate this particular target who John ends up kind of having an emotional affair with. And when Jane kind of finds this out and confronts the woman at gunpoint, as, you know, healthy people do.
As you do, right?
But I think her name is Bev, the other woman. I think her name is Bev. But she basically...
and I love this actress, and her name is Michaela Cole. Cole.
She was great. But she's telling Jane what her and John talk about, and one of the things she says is that John feels like your lives got intertwined way too quickly. He regrets showing you, introducing you to yoga, because now you always do it with him and you can't do it alone anymore. And it's kind of like, it is one of the most important things in a relationship is kind of like you got, or at least I feel like it's important for us, is kind of like
we can only speak
to us, but is kind of having these spaces that are ours and that are kind of our individual refuge.
Like my podcast.
You invited me on.
I'm kidding. But no, you're absolutely right. Please continue.
But having these spaces that are kind of like yours, and it's not that like you are unwelcome, but like it's kind of like, this is my thing, and I do it. This is part of why it probably sounds so silly to everybody else. Why, like, we watch different TV shows sometimes.
Oh yeah.
Where there'll be times where it's like, there are things that we watch together, like this show, but there'll be things where it's like, nah, I'm gonna watch this on my own, and like we'll have these conversations with each other of like, hey, is this an us show or is this a you show?
Right. And then sometimes we'll watch things on like opposite schedules. Like I watched Pluto and you watched Blue Eyed Samurai, and now we're gonna swap and watch the other one.
But it's just the importance of kind of having these spaces that are yours, and it's kind of like they don't have that.
Yeah, and more than just that, it's not more than just that, but adding on to that, it's not just personal things, it's work as well. So when things go badly at work, things are also bad in the relationship.
Because they're each other's colleague, they're each other's soul colleague. So it's kind of like you get in a fight with your colleague at work, you can at least go home and decompress. That motherfucker's right there for them. Yeah, and
it's life and death. So that adds the extra sprinkle of this is a lot on top. So yeah, that was just something that stood out to me, I think, was how all of the negatives played off of each other. There was no space for refuge, right? There was no, because they couldn't even go somewhere and really blow off steam in a way that was safe.
Nope. So there's nowhere to go. And so because there's nowhere to go for them, right, they got to kind of stick it out and figure it out.
Yeah.
And it almost feels like, it almost feels like these characters are set up for failure. And it almost feels like it's deliberate.
Yeah. I know one of the things that we were questioning was like, what exactly did Hi use to match up John's and Jane's, right? Because I don't think we mentioned this at the beginning, so I may have to go and add a little bit of editing. But like, part of joining this, like, you forego your real name and you are dubbed Jane and John Smith. So they're like Jane and John Smiths all over New York City, because they're all
over the world. Technically, but yeah, they've foregone everything about themselves, and they've kind of become, you know, they've assumed these new identities, and you know, they kind of become the mask, and it feels like that's part of what is expected, that you kind of become tied to this person and dependent upon this person, and that's what they want. But it also feels like that ends one of three ways. Either you have somebody that you have a group that submits to the system, you know, you have couples that flame out, you know, or you have people that try to run because they don't want to live this life forever. And I think what's interesting is we kind of see them move through those different, become those different couples kind of throughout the story, where initially they're down with it, but they have this naive idea that they can take the money and run eventually, that they'll do a certain amount of missions and then they'll run. And it's not until they meet another John and Jane couple and they talk with them and they realize, oh, there's no exit strategy for this. This is for life, you know. And they also get introduced to the idea that like the John and Jane that they meet were not each other's original John and Jane.
Right.
So that like, oh wow, so John and Jane's can be killed and be replaced, and you know, and you know, so this is gonna last until we're both dead or one of us is dead.
Yeah. I mean, and there is the possibility of switching levels, right? They are doing high risk missions. They could go down to low risk missions, delivering packages, which becomes a point of tension, right? Because Jane does not want to do that. And John is like, but what if we had a baby? You know, so there is that option of like downplaying your risk factors, right? But once you're in the company, you're in the company.
Yeah, you're in
which
for life.
LOL, metaphor for capitalism. You either submit, you try to run and you're killed, or you die. Awesome. You're right. This is a very millennial show.
Yeah. And so it's kind of like when they become aware of that, it's like, oh, well, oh shit, then this is you know, this is for the long haul, and it creates a lot of pressure on them to make the relationship work, which gets complicated as the deeper they kind of go into their slew of missions.
Yeah.
Jane gains more expertise. She becomes more competent, which makes John insecure and leads to relationship friction. Jane is also very, very, very demanding in certain areas and isn't, you know.
They both a lot, but yes.
Yeah, and I think what's great about them both being a lot is they fight and you understand while they're fighting.
Yeah.
And they're both such assholes to each other that you can't really take sides, because as soon as you're like, ah, man, I feel where John's coming from, then John says some like ridiculous out of pocket shit, and you're like, ooh, yeah, no, you went too far.
I mean, it's wild because you're absolutely right. I know there were a lot of moments when like John bought them a house and in Italy and didn't talk to her about it, and it was just a house that he bought, and it was like, surprise, it's a house, and I was like, the fuck? And also he was like, I'm gonna put a baby in you, and she was like, we did not talk about this. Yeah. You know, so like absolutely he would pull things out from left pocket, but Jane was also very good at that like twisting of the knife.
Oh god, she was a psychological fucking ninja. She would just say like she would like say the exact right thing. The exact right thing to trigger this man who she knows like is deeply insecure about, you know, aspects of their relationship. So like they have an agreement that like on missions, if they have to, they can sleep with somebody. Yeah. And she like throws out there, she's like, yeah, I slept with two people. Not because she slept with two people, because she deliberately wants to stick it to him, and she wants to say the thing.
Out with those two people.
Yeah, and she wants to say the thing that's going to hurt him the most in that moment.
So they're both all fucked up. Honestly. Divorce. but
they can't.
But they can't. Divorce is his death.
But you know, I don't think. And I think what I loved about the show ultimately is like, I think we have these ideas about what makes people compatible, right? And at the end, you know, before we get to like the cliffhanger finale, you know, we have this moment where, in an homage to the original movie, they kind of have this showdown where they fail the third mission. They are both under the impression now that the other is trying to kill them.
Which is true.
What's true?
Well, they were trying to do a murder. They both got the order to kill the other.
We don't know if he got the order. We assume, we know that Jane got the order. We don't know if he got the order. But they both basically have these instances where Jane gets shot at and her cat gets killed, which is horrible.
Yeah, I was very upset about that. I kind of was like, wow, I would have liked a warning for animal cruelty. We don't see it though, which is important.
Don't. And then John goes to his mother's house and it's wired with explosives. And so they're both in this situation now where they're like, oh shit, my former spouse is trying to kill me. And so now we're off to the races with these two kind of, you know, manifesting their marital conflict, like in physical and very visceral form, where they have a chase sequence and they end up back at the house and then they beat the shit out of each other and they shoot up their house, and then it culminates in them both being injected with that truth serum. And it's that kind of moment that allows them to kind of strip away the things that they use to protect themselves and to kind of be honest with each other and to open up with each other about what they need and what they feel. And I feel like, honestly, that's what a relationship is. As much serum? As we, not truth serum, it's truth not induced by serum. You know? So
what you're saying is I should not get a whole bunch of vodka and use that to get the truth out of us.
That's just gonna give us both a hangover. I don't feel like that's gonna go well.
No, okay.
But no, it allows them to share, honestly. And I think that's the thing. If we're talking about what makes a relationship, or at least from my perspective, that makes a relationship work or not, it's how honest can you be? How receptive can you be to somebody else's honesty?
Which is not cruelty.
Yeah, it's not.
To be clear.
It's not.
Because there is, I will say, maybe malicious honesty.
Yeah, there are people that'll be like, oh yeah, I'm just keeping it real.
I'm just being honest. That's why you're so ugly.
You're being a dick,
like,
man.
No, you're just being mean, actually. Fuck it.
But no, they're being honest about the things that they fear, about the things that they want from each other, about the shames that they've carried, you know? And sharing that with each other, they're able to bridge this massive chasm that has been forming between them. And it's kind of like, even though on paper, these two should not be compatible. Like, if they were on a dating app, they would look at each other's profile and be like, nah, you know? And yet, by the end of the season, they're truly partners at this point.
Right. No, you're absolutely right. Can we rewind a little bit? Because we've wound ourselves up at the end of the show, but I wanted to talk a little bit about the episode where they were at the therapist, because I think this would be a good place, because both you and I were interested in talking about tone a little bit, and I think that episode would be a good place to kind of think a little bit about tone.
Okay.
So you mentioned when we were talking in the car after picking up pizza, that this show had a weird tone. What did you mean by like weird?
Oh, I'm gonna sound super smart when I say this.
I'm ready.
The vibe of the show was very much, I don't know, it gave me, it is not like Donald Glover's Atlanta, right?
Okay.
These are two very different shows, and yet I almost feel like the comedy there was very similar. Where in Atlanta, in the show Atlanta was very, like, I could see how these shows came from the same creators, right? Okay. And the way that the sense of humor was kind of dry, but also kind of irreverent, and it was based predominantly, you know, in these characters' relationships. And
go ahead. I was going to ask if you can give an example from the episode, but you weren't finished, so go ahead.
Yeah, no. So it's kind of quirky, you know. It's quirky, but in a very grounded way. I don't know. It's very weird. Like, no, I'm all over the place.
Quirky in a grounded way.
Quirky in a grounded way. I feel like we're gonna have to edit that one out.
No, I'm leaving it in. Quirky in a grounded way.
No, I don't, because I don't know if that's what I mean.
Okay.
It's like I'm searching for how I would define the tone.
Okay.
But so the comedy is very, very domestic in a way, where it kind of is. It's based around these two's relationships and kind of the barbs that they will throw at each other, but none of them feel like they're not zingers, you know? It's a lot of the jokes are kind of
the jokes
clumsy.
aren't zingers.
Yeah, the jokes aren't zingers. They're clumsy, they're observational. It's the humor is typically, for instance, when Jane is chasing down this guy, right? She's chasing down one of their targets. John lags behind because, you know, he's having an asthma attack, right? And she catches up with the target, says a catchphrase like "Die, motherfucker!" and then throws him off the roof. And then John, just, and like what's funny is like you don't really laugh immediately because well, I didn't laugh immediately until John on the walkie-talkie, like on their radio.
Walkie-talkie, how old are you?
Yes, dating myself. But like on the earpiece, he just starts dying. And he's like, "Die, motherfucker!" Is that a catchphrase? And he just starts, you know, poking, like giving her shit. And it was such a spouse thing to do. like that was when that became funny to me. Oh, you know.
I think I started giggling when she was like, "Die, motherfucker!" Because just like sometimes it'd be like that.
And it's just, I don't know, like the ensuing argument, like from that, it just feels. There's a lot of verisimilitude in kind of just what happens in these, you know, in marital situations, like the types of the ways that you'll make fun of each other, the way that you'll use inside jokes, you know, the sidebar conversations that you'll have about things, and like, you know, hushed tones that are like after a party, you know, and you're decompressing. You're like, those people were fucking weird. Like this show is full of a lot of those kind of asides, you know?
Okay.
So it kind of feels very naturalistic in a way, but also, like I said,
I see what you're saying.
It's quirky. So like I said, I was going to sound real smart. I had to ramble a lot.
Yeah, sometimes that's how it works. Sometimes that's how it works. But no, I think you make a good point in pointing to that kind of comedy, because there was a lot of that in the episode where they go to the couples therapist. And another thing, actually, kind of thinking about this episode that the show does well is it moves from serious moments to comedy and back to serious moments, because there were quite a few moments in that episode where I was like cracking up because I was just caught off guard or things were funny. But what that episode is about is showing how every time Jane and John seem to be coming back together, something happens that pushes them even further apart, you know? So there's like that push and pull, and oftentimes the thing that's pushing them further and further apart is what they're doing
to each other.
And work and how they're interacting with each other. But, you know, like, for example, one of the jokes, which was kind of terrible, is that John and Jane have a heated exchange. He gets up to blow off some steam and he touches a piano and starts to play the piano in the room. And the therapist is like, "Don't touch that." And she says that it was her grandparents.
It was her grandfather's piano.
Her grandfather's piano from World War II. And it was the one thing they managed to save from when the Nazis were around and all that kind of stuff. And it was like this really dark moment. But then John's reaction, and he's like, "Oh, I didn't know. Oh my God." And she's like, "Most people don't know." And he's like, "Well, maybe you should put like a sign on the piano." So it's just the whole, I get what you're saying about this like quirky, but it's dry and irreverent at the same time. Like that kind of that kind of moment really drives that home for me.
And I think it's kind of like, to be clear, so like thinking about the original Mr. and Mrs. Smith, right? Mm-hmm. Which is also this metaphor about marriage, apparently. But a lot of those jokes that they have are also kind of based around marriage jokes and relationships and whatnot. But they're a lot more clunky, and I know that's kind of a symptom of the time, but they're more kind of about going for the cheap laugh. That's they're like, men are from Mars, women are from Venus, we're different. John is a assassin, but he drives this like off-road vehicle up to the target like a moron and uses a rocket launcher, whereas Jane is like posted up using this, sniper rifle, and is very tactical. And so that's kind of the type of humor that this leans on, where the humor in this show, like I said, is a lot more based in character and like actual character, not like stock characterizations like that, but actually kind of like,
these people is fucked up.
Yeah, like, they are messed up and they repeatedly, poke each other below the belt and hit each other in these sensitive areas. And sometimes it is tragic and sad, and sometimes it is deeply fucking hilarious. And the show just rides that thin line between comedy and tragedy just so well.
Yeah. I think that's a great way to highlight it. Is like there's a thin line. There's a thin line between comedy and tragedy, which is often why it's like I can do nothing but laugh about this circumstance. And you're right. I think they balance that tightrope really, really well. The last thing that I just wanted to quickly touch on, because I kind of mentioned it in the beginning, was how like color was used to work with tone. And it was mainly, not mainly, but I know the one that really stands out to me was in this episode in particular, because each of their sessions with the therapist progressively get more desaturated and also like just dimmer. So the first one starts off even a little bit brighter. The therapist is wearing this really actually fantastic blue suit.
Everybody has drip in this show.
Everyone's just so well dressed. But then the color is a little pulled out of it by that point, and by their last session, it's almost like in grayscale. It's not quite that far gone, but like you can tell. If you couldn't tell from the body postures and how far apart John and Jane are sitting from each other on the couch, like the fact that it's just washed out in gray lets you know exactly where things are. And I just thought that was such a brilliant use of something that is often maybe you're not thinking about so much, or that can go unnoticed, let's say when you're watching film, but really kind of honing in on the environment and the visuals in showing us the internal state of these two characters. I just thought that was spectacular.
Chef's kiss.
Yes, chef's kiss. And also they blew that house up, and that was funny. The reason is...
That was an amazing joke. It was an amazing joke.
So the reason is that they were going to therapy, and they were, of course, not saying exactly what they do. They use the cover of being software engineers.
They did, though, in the first meeting when she left the room to yell at her kid. They had a hushed conversation where they were like, you tried to kill me or you could have gotten me killed. So like they did flat out.
You're right. I totally forgot. So what ends up happening at the end of the episode is that they realize that the doctor's recording all of the sessions.
The video and the audio.
Video and audio so that they can watch it over later and, talk about, what they saw or if there's anything else they'd like to go over. And they can't have that as super spies. And I totally forgot that they had that hushed conversation.
Yeah, and also to mind you, like each session, we're getting a new detail about this house, about how the floor was brought in from her childhood home, how she has it's an art piece from this departed artist, and it was the last piece, and he like said that this ends with me, so it's like this whole legacy bit, the piano from her grandfather, and her just repeatedly talking about how
this is her dream home.
This is her dream home. This is just her hearth. This is a wonderful place to be. And when they realize that the cover has been blown, they burn the house down and then speed walk out
and get into their like fucking minivan and drive away while having an argument about like
what just happened and if they should try therapy.
Get another therapist.
And then throughout the rest of the show, because there are only 2 episodes left, but they're like using the techniques they talked about in therapy. So like it worked or I'm not gonna say it worked, but it was useful.
I was gonna say worked
in terms of the way that they were able to like pause arguments and the ways that they talk to each other. You could see them putting into practice what they learned, which just made it even funnier in hindsight.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, I can only laugh because it's not real, right? Like, because that's tragic what they did to that woman and her badass son, who she said had no respect. Oh boy. Did you have any other burning thoughts about Mr. and Mrs. Smith that you wanted to make sure we talked about?
No. I'm curious what they do for the second season because I feel
did we
like
know there's going to be a second season?
Yeah. With the cliffhanger ended as, and I think the numbers that it was doing on Amazon, I don't remember if it got officially greenlit, but everything I'm seeing seems to hint toward at least another season.
Okay, we'll see. Because I didn't know if the ending was one of those where it was like, we're just ending it here and you can make a decision about which way you think it goes. But go on.
But it's just like they've sufficiently kind of like, they didn't blow up the house like they did in the movie, but there's no real going back for these two. Mm-mm. And they have, I don't think they've exhausted all of the, exploration of marital relationships per se.
No, I don't think so.
But I'm just interested in kind of what theater they take this to next. Where they go next with these two's relationship, because this season was about them ultimately deciding to commit to one another and commit to this relationship, and I think that's what we got to. So now they're in it together, but their house is gone, and they're probably going to be on the lam.
So what would you like to see as a married man? What would you like to see? I don't know why I said that.
It's funny. I typically don't really have like a wish list when it comes to next seasons.
Okay.
I just because the people writing this are way smarter than I am, and I imagine. I imagine that what they will come up with,
I doubt they're going to listen to this podcast and be like, wow, Andrew, that was a bad idea.
That's because you don't got sponsors. If you had sponsors.
Fuck you. That's what I hope they talk about.
It's like, fuck Andrew. Fuck Andrew. My whole government.
Pain in the ass husband. That's what season 2 should be about. Only Jane vindication.
There are some mythos questions that I have that I would like to understand, like who Hi is, why he was tanking their relationship,
assumption of he
or she or they as an organization, or they like they're Hi could not. Hi is probably more than one person.
I was gonna say the whole time they're like, it seems like a lot of people think of Hi as one person. I'm like, man, there's probably like 25 people manning this one account. There's probably a call center of Hi.
Could be a language model.
Oh my God. You think it's ChatGPT? You think Hi is ChatGPT?
Or Gemini.
I'm sorry.
That'd be the twist.
Oh my God. You think they're killing all these people because the AI
because
the
AI got a hold of somebody's money.
Ooh.
It's going off script.
Oh God. That's on some, what is it? Space, not Space 2001. Wow, 2001: A Space Odyssey. Space 2001. But okay, so you have questions. You want to know who Hi is?
Yeah, I want to know who
Hi
is.
If Hi is ChatGPT or not.
And I kind of like. I feel like
a large language learning model.
We've seen John's family stuff, and I would love to get an idea. I would love to start to see, some of Jane's family. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we know that her mother is dead.
Yep, and her relationship with her father is strained and non-existent, Ooh. So, like, I would love for them to start poking that bear.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good. I think I agree with wanting to see Jane's dynamic. I wonder, based on how things ended up in the end of season 1, if we will get some child stuff thrown into the mix. you know, because what happens when you're a super spy and you find out you're pregnant?
So, you know what? That's one thing that we didn't touch upon that I loved. The fact that they are not super spies.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Like,
they're not super spies.
No. It wasn't. And this isn't like me being like, no, you're wrong.
No,
but
I know.
I love the fact that, like, so to be clear, when they're brought on, she's a CIA burnout and he's a Marine. Like, he got kicked out of the Marines. Because
Honorably discharged?
I don't know if it was honorable or dishonorable. I think it was kind of just...
He was just discharged.
Yeah, because they basically were like, you have asthma, your lungs are bad, you can't be a Marine, and they kicked him out. But like they're both kind of washouts from these different areas, and so they're going on these spy missions, but like they're not 007 caliber like in the least bit. It feels like they are the John McClane of spies. Where it's like they get in there, they'll get the job done, but it's not necessarily going to be pretty.
Yippee-ki-yay.
But they are clever. You know,
Yes.
they are clever, and when they're not
thinkers.
at each other's throats, they work together well.
Yeah. So this is really fun. I enjoyed talking about Mr. and Mrs. Smith with you, even if I cussed you out twice this episode.
Was it only twice?
About the same thing. I think I only
I
said
was
it.
slacking.
Yeah, I know. Next time you come on the show, I'll do a better job.
I'll have to be a little bit more.
No, you were just the right amount of annoying. Thank you. So, on future SLL episodes, to tell you a little bit about what we have coming up, even though Andrew won't be there, I hope you will listen to these episodes that we have coming. Our next episode that we're going to do is going to be about Hadestown, because we've been really excited to talk about it. Corinne actually went to go see Hadestown again, so she'll have some perspective.
She went to see it again?
Yeah, she went to see it
Where?
In Florida, yeah.
Huh, okay.
Yeah, she saw the traveling show. So she's going to have some interesting perspective, having seen it on Broadway and then having seen the traveling show. We're also excited to do our episode on divorce comedies, which will be an interesting kind of like counterpoint almost to talking about marriage in this one.
And how it works.
And how it works or doesn't work, right? And I've been reading A Court of Thornes and Roses, which I know people are kind of apeshit about, actually. And in my texting Corinne about it, apparently me and also, I believe her sister, are reading this book that is not new at the same time and have been texting her about it. So we're probably going to do an episode about A Court of Thornes and Roses. We might do more than one episode if we decide to read more than one book. I think Corinne says if we do one episode, we have to do more than one. So we'll see how that goes. But we'll at least do an episode about the first one sometime soon. Excited to do those, and I hope you will check them out when they come out. Andrew, thank you for being here. Do you want the people to find you on the internet?
I don't want anybody to find me on the internet. I feel like my greatest superpower is that I exist on the internet anonymously.
Okay, well.
Except for the fact that like my Twitter handle is literally my full name. I need to do something about that. This was like I made this Twitter years ago.
Okay. You do not have like a very uncommon name though.
That's my camouflage.
Yeah.
That they're like an army of more accomplished Andrew. They already have your name. I was out here going to be like Andrew, like Andrew X. Like, no, you had to fuck up and put your surname on. You just outed me. You outed my whole ass government, whole ass identity. Years of covert internet operations just down the drain.
Andrew Blake,
because of my wife's unsponsored podcast. That's what'll do me in.
Anyway, don't look for Andrew on the internet.
Don't look for me.
If you want his attention for some reason,
just email Ayanni. Don't message her. Don't DM. Email.
Fuck off, Andrew. Ooh, my stomach hurt. As I was saying. as I was saying, if you want to find us, you can reach out to us on our social media accounts. That's at SexLoveLit on Instagram and Threads, technically. Or you can find us on Tumblr at SexLoveLitPodcast. You can let us know what other kinds of episodes you'd like to see us do. You can let us know how you felt about Mr. and Mrs. Smith, or what episodes that we have coming up that you're excited about. This has been Sex Love Literature. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Bye!
Bye!